Welcome to Face2Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face2Face.
So my next interview was from the Toronto International Film Festival with Alanis Obomsawin. Again, another one of those interviews that was a real privilege for me to do. Jordan River Anderson, The Messenger is the film. This was the world premiere, and it's a film that you're going to be able to see through the National Film Board. And Alanis and I talk a little bit about a retrospective of her work at the end of the interview that's going to be available over the next, I think in the next couple of years, actually. And again, a real pleasure to interview this woman who is just full of so much passion and so much energy. And she talks a lot about having to fight for everything. This is a film that is about Canadian law. This is a film about Canadian history. This is a film about injustice and about coming to terms with our past and something called Jordan's Principle. So let me just read this blurb from you for you. And this is right off the Toronto International Film Festival's website. Quote, Alanis Obomsawin's remarkable 53rd film documents the story of a young boy forced to spend all 5 years of his short life in hospital while the federal and provincial governments argued over which was responsible for his care, as well as the long struggle of Indigenous activists to force the Canadian government to enforce Jordan's Principle. The promise that no First Nations children would experience inequitable access to government-funded services again, close quote. The day that I interviewed Alanis, there was an announcement. You're going to want to look it up. Jordan's Principle, CBC. It's online. There's lots of information there about the principle and about what's actually going on. Alanis gets very intimate. She gets very personal. So please do take the time to listen in on this. This is an important piece of our history that touches on justice and responsibility and some of the poor choices that have been made in the past, and how we are getting closer to the conversation. Well, the conversation about reconciliation clearly is happening, but we are getting closer to that. And a way to get there is by seeing films like this, by trying to get a better understanding, by listening. And I think that is what is required of us as Canadians, to listen a little more, get a better sense for the context of what happened and what's currently happening, and then try to step in and see what we can do. So coming right up, Alanis Obomsawin, her 53rd film, Jordan River Anderson, The Messenger. Don't forget davidpecklive.com for more information about my writing and public speaking. You can get a copy of Real Change is Incremental there. Face2facelive.ca. The podcast has been going on for over 5 years and a bit. We're coming up on 500 interviews in 2020. If you want to get behind us and support the work that we're doing, you can do that through patreon.com. $1, $5, $10, $20 a month would be greatly appreciated to help us offset some of the costs here. And if you can't do that, and I totally understand that, I really do, could you leave us a review on iTunes? We would sure appreciate that. Sign up for the newsletter, forward the podcast to friends, tweet about us, get us up on Facebook, and spread the word about Face2Face. And if you'd like to advertise with us, you can do that as well. We have a newsletter. We can do banner ads. We've got newsletter ads. We've got shout-outs during and special podcasts, and a whole host of other ways that you can step into a whole new world and demographic. We've had hundreds of thousands of downloads over the last few years, and we'd like to grow that as much as we possibly can. And rabble.ca, don't forget, news for the rest of us. It's a platform where Face2Face also exists, and you've got writers and bloggers and podcasters talking about issues and things that matter, and news for the rest of us. And don't touch that dial. Alanis Obomsawin coming right up. Jordan River Anderson, The Messenger. Well, welcome to Face2Face. We're joined by a very special guest here with us today in Toronto at the Toronto International Film Festival. Actually, a returning guest, Alanis Obomsawin, is here to talk about her new film, her important new film, Jordan River Anderson, The Messenger. And we were just chatting about the beautiful name of this film. Alanis, can you why don't you step into it a little bit for our listeners and tell us a little bit about the name and the importance of the story, and then we'll tease out some of the implications for sure.
I find the name so beautiful, especially having a river in it. It's so sacred. I've been working on and off in this film since 2011.
Wow.
And in between, I made 5 other films. But I was following Jordan's principle, what was happening in court. We filmed everything in the courtroom. And I never felt that I could finish the film up until now. Because, first of all, there was quite a war against the fact that Indigenous children were not getting equal rights to services, health services and education. And it was very hard. If I had not been inside the courtroom to witness everything that went on, I would have had a hard time to believe it. And what I found very disturbing was there's another film I made. It's called We Can't Make the Same Mistake Twice. And part of the question of Jordan's principle is in it also. And what I was shocked was when people were being questioned, government people in Indian Affairs and different departments, they were always very defensive or trying to justify their way of judging who should get help or not. There was a committee that was formed inside the government, and whenever a family, someone would apply to get help through Jordan's principle, they would never get anywhere. And they never seemed to qualify to get help through this movement. And then there was a time when $11 million was put aside to help cases who were applying through Jordan's principle, and a lot of children, obviously, who had special needs. And then there's some people that testify and said that none of them could access the money because they were not real Jordan's principle case.
Oh, wow.
They did not qualify. But worse than that was that finally they were asked, well, was there ever any money spent from the 11 million? And they said no. So it was returned, I guess, to Treasury. I'm not sure to where.
Right.
Meanwhile, you have
You got to wonder if it was even there in the first place.
No, it was, apparently, yeah, for sure. But the committee would always come with the answer, no, this child doesn't qualify. But not only that, but then there's one person who came, and she said that every year they give an award inside the government for a department or, I don't know how to call it, or some kind of rules or that people abide by and did a very good job, would receive an award. And she said, this woman, so I decided that Jordan's principle, people who worked so hard to make sure not spend the money, obviously, she didn't say that, but they gave an award because they did such a good job. They did such a good job in not giving any help to anybody.
Wow.
I was really shocked at that one.
Well, you said, Alanis, you said earlier that if you hadn't have been there, this is a story that you wouldn't have believed.
No.
Is that, and you, so this is 2011, so you're in your 8th year kind of following this story and connected stories over the many, many years, 53 films, and the many stories that you've told about Indigenous rights and First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. Is there a sense in which you still can't believe some of
Well,
the things
now,
that have gone on? And I know today, and we'll talk about it, but just yesterday on the CBC, we hear that Jordan's Principle again is back in the news.
Yes.
In a really positive way.
Yes. Well, the reason why I finished the film finally is because I also was a witness of something really great
So
and
good.
really loving
It's wonderful.
in the courtroom. And the changes, this is my opinion now, perhaps it's not totally right. I really think the changes came because of some of our people that are working inside the government, Indigenous people. Also, Dr. Philpott had a lot to do with it. She's an incredible woman.
I did an event last year with her in Markham, and she was on a panel. And at the end of the panel, which was about, important, relevant things, she actually started to sing a song. And just connected with the audience in just such a beautiful way. She's
that
really
wonderful?
quite wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, it's nice to hear you.
Yes,
bring her up.
I was very impressed with her. And so all these years, zero money given through Jordan's Principle to all these families. 2016, the tribunal came out with their decision and said that the government was discriminating against Indigenous children, and came out with their rules 2016. And of course the government appealed against it, and nothing was happening. It was not until 2017 that the big changes came. And again, I sat in a courtroom and watched, and there's a woman whose name is Dr. Gideon. She was a witness. And what a difference in terms of answering the questions. She was questioned by the lawyers, and one of the lawyers for Cindy Blackstock's foundation. And he asked her all the questions, like why did this happen, that for so long nobody got any help, and then she starts saying that now there was a change. And what I liked about her is she's not tried to say, oh no, we did what we were supposed to do. No, the government, and never, because that's usually the answers.
Right.
And she said, no, it was wrong. And the tribunal told us it was wrong what we did, and we changed. And they told us how this rule has to be applied, and we're applying it like it should be. And we've been giving so much money to all the different families, and they came out with numbers, and the lawyer said, does that mean that all those people who were refused before were compensated for?
Right.
And she said yes. And every time that he would ask a question that before, the way that they would answer would say, oh, no, it's because I didn't qualify. Oh, no, it's because, no, we did what we have to do. And always defending the wrongdoing.
Right.
Where now, she said, it was wrong. We did it wrong. And we changed. And we're obeying.
And we learned.
I tell you, I was sitting there.
Yeah, quite moving. I mean, isn't this what advocacy and activism and what government is really supposed to be about?
Yes.
Right?
And it's so...
well, what did Jane Philpott in the movie said? She said, we need to fight back and we need to reverse it.
Yes.
Right?
You saw the film?
I did, yes.
Oh,
yes.
and
by the way, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yes.
Oh, here I am explaining to you, and you saw it.
No. I've seen the film. I'm so
it
sorry.
was so... These two women really are incredible. And so I keep telling people, like, we criticize government all the time, especially Indian affairs, you know.
Yeah. You get into politics for all the wrong reasons, those kinds of cliches, right? Very cynical.
Yes. And my God, it brings me back to the 60s when the first year we became citizens of Canada for the first time.
Wow.
So that year, there seemed to be a lot of incredible things going on around the world, including ourselves at that time. And we began to travel. Like, I'd never been anywhere. I didn't know about all the different nations. And I was very ignorant of a lot of things. And then we start meeting all the people that called us activists. We start meeting and forming organization. We discovered how rich we were, in languages and the traditions, the culture, and the feelings really were incredible and to see how beautiful our people are. So
it's a beautiful soundbite, by the way. We discovered how rich we were. I mean, if somebody was going to report on our conversation today, wouldn't that be a wonderful place to sort of land on? Because I think, I've worked in international development for many, many years, and one of the things that continues to kind of blow me away is when I go into another country, thousands of miles away, the richness of the people and the tradition, the culture, the space, the environment. It's a long, wonderful list, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I just turned 87 years old last week.
And you're still making films.
Yes. And I'm lucky because my health is good.
That's amazing. Happy birthday.
Yes,
I should have brought you a gift.
Oh.
And do you have any loot bags left over from the birthday party? You know, the loot bags you give to people when when people come to celebrate your birthday party?
Oh, I didn't celebrate this year, but I had a lot of people calling me to see if there was a party, because I have a big party every 5 years. So if I live to be 90, then I'll have a big party. Good. I said I'm too young now.
You're still too young, yes.
Yes.
It's remarkable. So let's talk about that, about the richness and clearly the hope that I even can see in your smile and in your the tone of your voice. You clear 53 films, 87 still going strong. Is that something that really drives you, the hope for something different and something better?
I think I owe to life, and we take for granted the everyday life. Like, I feel, my God, I can walk, I can work, my health is good. That's richness, and I want to recognize it, that I'm lucky to have that. It's a gift. And it's very difficult to, all these years, like we've had to fight for everything, for every step. Right. It's been very hard and very difficult. So much so that you forget what you have. What is the reality? Like, I look at the children, I look at people, and I say, oh my God, why were we so much called, you're ugly, you're dirty, you're a savage, you're all this, all that. So when you hear that kind of language all the time, you start believing it, or you identify with it. But when we start thinking differently and thinking of what we have, let's look at what we have. Let's look at all the good people across this country that are changing and that are wanting to see justice to our people. 10 years ago, whenever we said anything, the Indians, they're always complaining, they're drunks, they're lazy, and everything that goes with that. Now I know, as I travel along the country, I feel there's an ear that was never there before. I'm talking in general. I find that Canadians are very curious, want to know what is the real history of this country, and want to see justice, and want to see good things. And a lot of people are helping us in many different ways. And I want to recognize that. And I want our people to know that. I want our people to know how beautiful they are. They have no clue. When you're always told, you're ugly, when I was a little girl, it was, your language is Satan's language. I heard that so...
See, now those are things that I just can't believe. Like, you're in the courtroom and you wouldn't have believed the story. When you hear things like that, on one level you do believe it, because it seems that, history shows us that human beings are capable of beautiful things, but they're capable of some pretty incredible, horrible things as well. And so on one level it makes sense. On another level, I just can't imagine ever saying that
Yeah.
to a child.
Well, this was constant.
Constant.
Yes.
Just culturally accepted.
Yes. Yes.
How far we've come.
And the terrible part, this is the reason why I sit here, because I really fought back and revolt.
Right.
But the very serious damage came from the books written by the church, designed to create hate and ugliness to our people, and called savages.
Alanis, by the books, do you mean like
School books.
The school book, the textbooks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Official school books designed to, I was the only Indian at that time in the classroom, and all the other kids, whenever the teacher opened the book Histoire du Canada, History of Canada, I knew that's the day I'm going to get beat up today. And I understand, like if all the children were reading these books, and so was the teacher, and discussing how we were savages, how we went around scalping poor Europeans who came here at first, the white people, and that the language was, dirty language was la langue du diable. It's the devil's language, or Satan's language, that I heard so many times. And so many children who spoke their language very well got punished for it. So it's the educational system that created the hate towards our people and calling us inferior. And this was established officially. That's the big crime. That's where it came from, that the rest of the people who came here hated us and called us all kinds of names. And, it was very, very bad.
You know what I love about all of this and about the film and your work is that there is a Canadian message here, obviously, and it's encouraging to hear that you say there's an ear out there that wasn't there before. There's a global message here, it seems to me, about reconciliation and trust. This can apply in Rwanda, in Cambodia, in Mongolia, and Burkina Faso. It applies everywhere. Isn't this about larger issues? It's about love. It's about respect. This is human rights and dignity and so on. It seems so sort of on the surface, but when you hear the way you're talking about how an education system was designed, the lessons there still apply. On so many levels. Yes.
So finally, these books were thrown out, but nothing to replace it for a long time. So, and we have our people, until 1951, when 48, 49, when the United Nations was created,
right,
and then the human rights movement was created, Canada was forced to look at how they treated their Indigenous people at that time by the world, by the United Nations, by the human rights movement. And for the first time, a paragraph in the Indian Act was changed, amended, that, I forget the phrase. I have to check it out. I used to know it by heart. Anyway, it was the first time that an Indigenous person was accepted inside a university without denying its race. Nobody could go to university unless you became a Canadian citizen, and we were not. So we were like treated the same way as the immigrant people who came here. So, because of the paragraph that was changed, now an Indigenous person could get into university without letting go of his race. And you know what that meant? Before that, it meant you're Canadian, you're an enemy, you're a traitor.
Right.
You go back to the city where you come from, and it created its separation amongst the people, the families. It was very bad. And, you think you're better than us, this kind of attitude. So now, first change was there. first time that an indigenous person could be going to university and be treated equally. Then, there was so much oppression through all the Indian Act. It's so, again, designed to get rid of our people and make them invisible, and etc. And all that thing about you're not a registered person, therefore you don't qualify for this, you don't qualify for that. Is there a mixed marriage? And, really horrifying stuff in that book. So what I want to say about that is how the Skid Rows in Canada became to be. A lot of people, like the government was even telling people, if you want to become Canadian, you go to the city and you live there and you have a better life, and we'll give you a bit of money. Some of them received $5,000, it was a lot of money then, or maybe $10,000. Others very little, especially if you don't have a treaty.
Sure.
And I feel like smiling because I'm thinking of our reserve and what happened. And there's another film I made. It's called Abenaki, People from Where the Sun Rises. It's about my own people. And there's a woman in there who talks about she married this white boy and she was very, very young. She didn't realize what that meant, your rights, And the agent, and we all had an agent, they used to call him Indian agent. He was not Indian. People thought he was. And he would make the rules. So if you're married outside, they send you a letter and they say, you're not allowed to live on the reserve anymore, and you have to let go of your rights. And you have to sign a paper. And she got money for her rights, and I don't think it was even $100.
Wow.
Can you imagine? So it's this stuff we could make a funny play on these.
What I was just going to say, you could make a movie about it, and you have 53 of them, right? And it's just, what would you say is one of the, could you say there's a thread? Is there a common theme? Is that even a fair question when you've made so many films and you've dug into so many different issues along the way? Is it reconciliation?
Reconciliation is really incredible, but there is a thread all along these years, these century of our people being stamped as wrong individual. It's just horrifying stuff. And then you are teaching officially in the classroom all these things. So what do you think happens? And then you hear the children could hear their parents giving their ways of talking about savages and all that. So what do you think happened in the classroom when the teachers was coming out with her paragraph about how this colonized country began? So all those things. So for us to realize ourselves of who we really are takes us a long time, and now it has come that I think many of us, even there's a lot of young people who have had drug problems or alcohol problems, and if they come out of that, they're the strongest of all. And they talk about, they figure, I want to know my language. I know the real healing is going to come from our people, from us, from within.
Right.
Some of the traditions our people had, and why, and all the explanation, and all the beautiful ways of thinking, and the generosity. And, in those days, like I was reading 1680, around then, these religious people are writing, and they realized that indigenous, they didn't call us indigenous then, they call us Indian, because Christopher Columbus was lost, thought it was in India, and the name stayed officially. So you say, these Indians, they love their children too much. They're too close to their children. The thing to do is to separate children from the parents, and that way we'll control them. it didn't start with the residential school. It started long before that with their first design and how they're going to realize this country.
One of the moments in the film that I loved was, a couple moments were when the elders were speaking about different things, and one of the elders talked about how children remind us of love, freedom, and dignity.
Yes.
And here was this idea of let's take their kids away from them to, I guess, further destroy their spirit, I suppose, amongst many other things.
Yeah.
It's just, it is horrible. It is mind-boggling. It is so deeply tragic. It's, we're talking about legacy to some degree, and I loved how you kind of, we're going to have to end the conversation here soon, Alanis. I'm so sorry, but you end the film with talking about the sacred and about the Bear Spirit and about Jordan, and there's a song that's being sung, and you talk about legacy and how he lived a short life. Somebody is you edited in this piece about lived a short life, but look
it's
at
his
the
sister.
impact. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Look at the impact.
Jolene.
Look at the legacy. And even today, I'm reading this morning on the CBC's website about money being set aside, and not just money, but it's also about the metaphor of it and the symbol, and how finally, after this many years. Anyway, I'm kind of just wrapping it up in my own head, and I'm really struck by the fact that 87, you've been doing this for so long, and you still are smiling. Yeah. And you're talking about the positive things that have come out of this.
We've never went to a place like we are now.
It's really quite remarkable.
And I think Jordan is a real messenger. This little baby, everything. Who could love these children more than their parents? Why force them to separate them? There's a sick thing right there. And I was in the film. There's one place. There's a woman who's singing, and she says, "And he scratched his neck," and he actually moves and scratches his neck. So every time, if you look at it again, you'll see. And even the nurse who's helping is turned around, and you can't believe, every movement, every look counts, and you see that this child is growing and doing things that he didn't do before. Luckily, at the hospital, the women, the nurses and the therapists were wonderful to Jordan. And that's another big plus also. And it's unfortunate that he never did go home or go to a
very sad story.
Private home. And then finally he passes away and he's 5 years old. So again, loss, rules. They said, the provincial is arguing who's going to pay for the expense of him moving to a home, all the equipment and all those things, and the federal. And because he was a registered Indian, he said it's the federal's responsibility. And then they were saying, no, he's in the provincial city. So this is why Jordan's principal motion was created.
Well, it matters in and of itself, clearly, as the CBC is reporting on. But it also matters to me, I think, as an advocate for others and an activist of a sort, I suppose, and even what I'm trying to do with my podcast. You do need to speak out. And I think the Jane Philpott's message about fighting back and about pushing back, and this is one of the many messages of your film, is that good outcomes can arrive as a result of saying, no, this doesn't make sense. This isn't right.
You have to make it right.
You have to make it right.
Yes.
Do you get, Alanis, do you get out of bed every morning wondering about what your next film is going to be, what the next story you're going to cover is?
I'm working
on
the next. Yes. And I have a lot of work to do because the film board is going to make a box set of the last 7 films. They're pretty well connected. And so I have a lot of bonuses to add, and it's a lot of work.
Right.
But it's going to be great, especially for educating.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I love the fact that you just turned 87, and we'll wrap it up here. Your line is, I have a lot of work to do. It's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. We've been talking with Alanis Obomsawin about her new film at the Toronto International Film Festival, available through the National Film Board. I would imagine it will be online and accessible very soon. Jordan River Anderson, the messenger. What a pleasure chatting with you today, and a real honor. Thanks for your time, Alanis.
I'm sorry I went into another total other place.
Oh, I think that's fine. We'll let our listeners pick it up from there.